Ladies and gentlemen, it's such a challenge today. If I go too fast, because there's just so much fun to be had here with the Australian electrical grid, then just give me a signal to slow down, because I might get carried away. But I don't want to make dinner late, so I'm going to try and punch this through as succinctly as I can. Ladies and gentlemen, for 100 years, we had a good grid. We had bountiful, reliable electricity for a mere 10 cents a kilowatt hour. It provided all the warmth and cooling and the air conditioning and the pool pumps and things that we could want. Clearly, it was time to try something else. To destroy a perfectly good grid is a lot harder than you might think. It takes lots of money, buckets of cash, and you have to overcome the free market, completely bypassing the force of independent competition, which will defeat you at every step if given a chance. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to ask why. Why would we want blackouts? You're probably thinking because, after all, you'd think that we would like to have reliable electricity. But blackouts are underrated. They can be fun, and we find out just how much fun 9 months later. It brings people back to an experience close to nature. Blackouts are good for that, reminding us of how much we don't like being cold or hot or bored. It's therapy for screen-addicted kids, and I have 2 or 3 of those. It's great for observing the stars. I'm thinking of you, near and astronomers, who it's the only time they can watch the stars, well, through optical scopes, without light pollution. Of course, they have to remember to charge their batteries beforehand and to put kerosene in the lamps. Of course, blackouts are really good for wood-fired telescopes. Yes, all of those. And in the end, though, the most important benefit of blackouts is it's the only effective antidote to the ARD and the ZDF and the BBC and the ABC. It's the only thing that silences the propaganda. Yes, we all like a blackout sometimes, especially when we're watching the news. Yes, the joy of blackouts. Oh, sorry, that slide's in the wrong spot. This is from another talk I do. It's an ancient pagan temple, temple to the sun. I think from the egomaniacal era. I think it's called Crescent Dunes in California. You've got to laugh at them, really. I'm sure people 1,000 years from now will look back on those things and say they were temples too. Now, the challenge for Australia is significant in destroying our grid. Part of that challenge is because we have far too much coal. We are the largest exporter of coal in the world. We are the 4th largest resource of coal. It's 3% of our GDP. It employed 17,000 people and makes 50,000 people it employs and brings in $50 billion a year to Australia. You can see why that stops us having blackouts, really. But anyway, there we are on the scale of things, Australia punching above our weight in the coal sector. You would think we would be the last country on earth to campaign against coal, and you would be wrong, because we do. And how much coal do we have, ladies and gentlemen? Enough for 300 years at our current rate of using it as our main electricity source and then sending lots overseas and bringing in $50 billion. Now, this is the situation with, is that uranium? No, that's not. Oh, that's the exporters. We are top exporter. Sorry, forgive me. This is the uranium situation. We have more uranium, another problem for us, another challenge, because we have more uranium than anyone else. In fact, to show you just how much, yes, that's right. It is so silly. Clearly, God was wrong giving us too much uranium. There are 450 nuclear reactors around the world, and in Australia we have none of them. 0. We send some uranium overseas. And thorium, yes, that's us too. More thorium than anyone else. I'm not sure that we just happen to live on God's gift on earth, or whether perhaps we just have better explorers and they're good at finding it. Aluminium smelting. At one point, our smelters used up 15% of our national electricity. Really, truly astonishing. And we are the largest exporter of bauxite, but only the 6th largest exporter of aluminium now, because aluminium uses lots of electricity, and we're driving those smelters out of business because they can't afford electricity in Australia. This is our electricity prices in Australia starting way back in 1955. You can see 40 years of falling electricity prices. Our engineers were really good at bringing down the price of electricity. Well, clearly we had to stop that, and we did. This is us in 1995. We're way down in electricity prices, failing, not achieving at all like the people up here. So we changed tactics, and our achievements so far in raising electricity has put us now up the top, almost. We're competing with Denmark and Germany, and I am proud to be here and humbled in the land of energy. The energy Wendy, is that how I say it? Can we defeat you? Wir schaffen das. Yes, we can. Well, watch this space. We're working. Yeah, we are on the cusp of taking over the top position. See how much we have achieved in the last 10 years in electricity prices? We had cheap pricing here in about 1995. This is new renewable energy coming in. Must be a coincidence. And these are our electricity prices now, way up above where they were 60 years ago. We've undone 60 years of engineering achievements and infrastructure. Points to us. Okay, why that mysterious price rise? Let's look at what we were using for energy back when our energy was cheap. And you would expect to find lots of free energy there, wouldn't you? Lots of wind power and solar power, because energy was cheap. And they make cheap electricity, don't they? That's what we're told. They tell you that too? Well, there's our energy profile. The brown stuff is coal. And the other stuff is also coal. That's black coal. So brown coal and black coal made up most of our electricity then. Then there's gas. Then there's me getting too much with the clicker. Then that's hydro. And above here, in iridescent green, is all the renewable energy we were using at the time. Exactly. So we had cheap electricity, and it was mostly coal and a bit of hydro. Well, we fixed that. In the last 10 years, you can see electricity renewables coming in, but it still isn't very much. What's really remarkable is how much you can achieve with prices with not very much in the way of renewables. They really do punch above their weight. So way up here, you might be able to see some little orange bits, or let me see those colours right. Yes, the orange is rooftop solar starting. The bright yellow is thermal solar. And wind is this green stuff. You can see it's actually not very much back in 2016. They're only a small part of our grid. Yet they were still doing a lot for us in the electricity price stakes, helping us win. Yes. There's our consumption by sector. Look, I'm going to get into those details another time. Here's the latest kind of December. And you can see there our electricity spread. Sorry, I'm not very good with this clicker, am I? Black coal and brown coal, and that's brown coal, that's black coal. There's some renewables on top. That was December. Things are changing. Honestly, that graph's out of date now because we have expanded our renewables since then by 50%. That's quite scary. I read that on the plane coming here. We have a 56,000 gigawatt electricity grid in total capacity of generation. Only 4,000 megawatts of the 56,000 megawatts was renewables back then. That's now going to be 6,000. So it's only increased by 2, but we are in so much trouble. So this is our renewable energy target. The government set a target that we must achieve, increasing every year more and more percentage of renewable energy. So started at 2% way back in the year 2000. It's now at 16%. We're headed for 20%. So it's increasing rapidly, and it's that false artificial market force which is creating all the trouble in Australia. The government has just said we must have renewables and wave their fingers and expect that somehow the engineers can make that work and make it cheap and affordable. Well, the engineers are doing their best. They can't be blamed for what's happening. It's called the RET, Renewable Energy Target. As part of that target, people are installing solar panels. Have a look at this graph. Solar panels in Australia, we're just hitting the death spiral part of that graph right near the end there. You see that hockey stick headed up like that? We're at the point now where electricity is so expensive. My household bill was 3,700 Australian dollars last year. It's getting so expensive you can't afford not to have solar panels. But the solar panels are subsidised by the people who don't own solar panels. So this is the point in the grid where everybody goes, oh my goodness, I can't afford to be one of the suckers paying for solar panels because the government forces us to, and I need to jump on the bandwagon, except for me, ethically of course I can't, but I'll be one of the last people in Australia without solar panels. But you can see what's going to happen to our electricity price. We are in deep doo-doo. Just anyone who's wondering whether renewables are the main cause of helping electricity prices get more expensive, this is a graph, it should be the antidote to renewables around the world, where you look at the trend, and the countries with more renewables have higher electricity prices. This graph's a bit messy. We punch above our weight there, less renewables but higher prices. But that includes hydro. So if we take the hydro out, or Ewan Mearns did, good on him, and graph that, you can see the graph gets much tighter. This is just the solar and wind component of electricity prices. And there, it's a neat trend line, isn't it? The more you have, the higher the prices go. You would think once this graph spread through the world that everyone would say, hold on, we've got to stop. Numbers don't seem to do that to people. Yeah, so and how much, when wind and solar are causing high prices, what does Australia do? We increase them by 50% in the last 12 months. Crash test dummies. We are the renewables crash test dummies of the world. But it costs a lot of money, of course, to do that. It isn't free to destroy an electricity grid. The cost of blackouts in South Australia, they lost 472 million Australian dollars in that blackout. It shut down Olympic Dam, one of the largest mines in the world, for 2 weeks. It took them to recover and get electricity back and working again. In Tasmania, the Basslink cable undersea broke. That cost them 560 million in lost revenue and costs before they could fix that cable. That's the cost of 2 gas-fired plants. Maybe we'll talk about Tasmania a bit later if I have time, but they shut their last fossil-fuelled gas plant 4 months before the cable broke. I tell you, if there is a God, there's a message. We are spending as Australians, sorry, I won't get into the details of this, we're spending about 4 billion federally in 2016, 1 billion, the states throw in money as well, that's 5 billion, we're a 25 million population. 5 billion a year in order to make this transition to renewables. which we don't have to have. This works out as $600 per household, and it's worse since 2016. That's out of date. The number is bigger. So step one, if you want to destroy a grid, step one, the first thing you have to do is take things like this, which you think of as industrial electrical creation plants, generation. You think these are for electricity, you just need to repurpose them. Now it's a global climate controller. So if you relabel all your plants, that's it. That's the first step. And it's a good step if you want to destroy your grid, because now, you see, you think these are supposed to make electricity, but this is actually meant to slow storms in 100 years. It's meant to stop floods and droughts and save the spotted quoll. This particular plant stops crocodiles from coming further south in Australia, which is really important. You might think that building levees would stop floods, but we use windmills. It doesn't seem to work too well yet. Yes, I just thought I'd throw that shot in, a nice shot of a coal-fired plant. They're beautiful creatures, really, aren't they? But you see that plant, that's causing cyclones. Got to stop that. We need more LED light globes to save us from bad weather. We need better generators to make nice weather and hold back the tide. And, yes, to create jobs in China. Sorry. That's, yes, people making our solar panels live in places like EIKE and Hengshui. They don't live in Australia. It's good for them, though. Now, there are ways to reduce CO2, but it's really important if you want to destroy a grid to not use the best ways, which is obviously to build nuclear power plants. The best ways are to pick intermittent, unreliable things. That's the best way to destroy a grid. It's not the best way to reduce CO2, but I don't think anyone's really interested in reducing CO2, are they? So we've got unreliable electricity. These are our wind farms. What a spaghetti mess. This is 1 month worth of wind farms in Australia, and you can see they range up and down. I think the top of the graph's about 3,000 or 4,000 megawatts, and the bottom of the graph is nothing. And across our entire eastern seaboard, we get nothing from our wind farms, roughly twice a month. That's because we get weather cells like this. And this weather cell, you can see the high pressure cell there. All the wind farms up and down here all do nothing together. Same as in Europe, isn't it? And solar is the same. Here's clouds across the east coast of Australia. Now, you wouldn't believe, but most of our solar panels are on houses up and down the east coast, and all at once, they too can stop producing. And it shows up on graphs. Here's a graph, sorry, it's a bit hard to read. That's the normal output up there of our solar panels at midday and the normal output at night time. That doesn't change. Here's a cloudy day. We lose, a gigawatt generator just like that. 200 or 300 megawatts can drop out over a city just when clouds roll over. Another thing our grid controllers have to deal with. And how often does it happen? We don't know yet because there's not enough data. But look, you can see solar across, this is daily solar, and you can see some days are just bad days for the sun across the whole eastern seaboard, where solar drops out across every state. Now, if you have a system, as we did, which had lots of infrastructure, good plants, coal and gas and whatnot, you can run the whole electrical grid as is, like this. Then someone had a bright idea that it would be cheaper if we doubled that infrastructure and we added lots and lots and lots of wind turbines, which don't work all the time, but they do work sometimes. And somehow this system would be cheaper, even though we had twice as much infrastructure. And then they thought we would add solar panels too. So we did. Something like a fifth to a quarter of all houses now have solar infrastructure added to the top of them. And maybe someone can explain to me how things get cheaper if you have twice as much infrastructure to produce the same energy as you used to have, and most of it sits around doing nothing. All of these big plants here are still there. They still have to pay their capital costs, their mortgage, their staffing costs, all the loans, the cleaning, the maintenance, everything else. The staff sit around while the wind turbines are running and watch YouTube cat videos or something, I don't know. But how is it supposed to be cheaper? Sorry, I'm just stepping out of the character of my talk here because I still don't get it. We're told wind and solar are cheap, but you've got to have the backup. Where's the savings? Where's the cost saving? I think it was this morning, Helmut was saying, like driving 2 cars and having one car sit in the garage all the time. We've got like 4 cars for every house in Australia with 2 drivers and 1 car sitting around doing nothing all the time, and we're trying to pretend it's going to be cheaper. Yes, the time. How are we going to save money on that one? Okay, step 3. It's really important you get big government involved. If you want to destroy a grid, you can't do it if you leave it to the states on their own. For 100 years, Australians had electricity in separate states, and it worked. Then they all got together. So we made a network that we joined up interconnectors. South Australia got connected up in about 1990 to Victoria. We only got the cable, I think, in about 2005 under the Bass Strait to join Tasmania in. And now the whole network stretches from Cairns down. It's 40,000 kilometres of network. It's pretty big, and I live over here, by the way, just to say, I don't know why everyone doesn't live there, but this is our small grid over there. That's another story. And so you get some kind of idea of the scale that we're talking about. I use this really cool website called True Size and moved Australia up so you can see what kind of distances we're talking about. Remember, we've only got 25 million people. Europe has like 600 million, doesn't it? And that's the scale. We've got a grid that runs from right up the top to right down the bottom. And this is also important, big government, because you can't mess things up unless you get big government involved properly. And you put the right person in charge of the whole thing. So this is... Yes. Well, lucky we don't have Angela Merkel running. I mean, I shouldn't say that. But anyway, yes, Audrey. She's a lovely lady from New York that Malcolm Turnbull employed. She was going to work with Hillary Clinton and then things didn't go so well. So luckily Australia acted as a rescue system and gave her another career possibility running our grid. And she has said great statements, as you would expect with someone running a national grid. Things like, we're the last generation on Earth who can really do something about climate change. That's right. Wait till you hear this one. Technology has changed, she says, and resisting this change is like trying to resist the internet. Yes, that's right. Because remember back in 1995 when the government had to force us all to use the internet so that it would work? Exactly, yes. With some inventions just take off on their own, but renewable energy needs big government. Yes, we don't have to worry about sacrificing economics for good environmental policy, she says, which is nice, but it's like Santa Claus, isn't it? Step 4, you've got to cripple the free market. You really do have to take that out because the free market will do everything it can to get in your way. What you must not let is for coal companies and coal stations that provide cheap electricity to work with homes directly. They've got to go through government networks and agencies, and we've got lots. If you let them go directly, like in the case here where we've got a crypto company from China has done a deal with a coal plant, so they're off-grid. And they're not subject to grid rules or renewable energy targets or green taxes, and they've done a deal for 8 cents a kilowatt hour. Little businesses in the same town that are another kilometre away past this, they're paying 28 cents a kilowatt hour. That's Australians paying 28 cents, and the Chinese have done a deal to get 8 cents. That tells you something about how cheap Australia could still have our electricity if we didn't have all those government agencies, and there's a few poles and wires in there that we really do have to pay for as well. Now, Audrey's big fear, she's the manager of our grid, is that the big players may leave the grid, leaving a fewer customers to pay for the rest. That's her worry, because if electricity prices are high enough, people will leave the grid. It's more efficient to be part of a big grid. But if you make it so expensive that people are better off buying diesel generators, they will, and they are. And farmers in Australia are buying diesel generators so that they can protect their crops, because blackouts sometimes happen at the wrong time and you just need one frost or one something. And so companies are buying diesel gens, governments are buying diesel. Our energy vendor, am I saying that right, has been very good for diesel. Tell me about it. 62% of Australians don't want to pay even $10 a month for renewables. They don't know they're already paying that and more. But it's, when asked questions, if you ask good people, 90% will say, yes, we believe in climate change. But if you ask them what they want to spend their money on, they don't want to spend their money on climate change. So it all depends on the question you ask. Yes, like 42% of US adults don't want to pay even $1 a month, and 61% of Germans don't want to pay one more euro cent. So the people don't want it. Now, in terms of cheap electricity, this is a graph from a US study. It's done in years. It's like 1 year up to like 50 years. This is capital costs, the big red part. After 30 years, the company's paid off. And so this is cost in dollars for electricity. You can see this sweet spot in electricity is 30-year-old coal plants. But even 50-year-old coal plants are cheap compared to just about anything else. Our greatest assets are our old coal plants because we can keep fixing them, but in Australia we've given up fixing them because it costs money to fix them and they're all going to go anyway, according to our government policy. This is one that went, Hazelwood, shining light, 53 years old. It shut down 2 years ago. When it shut down, it was producing electricity at $30 a megawatt hour. Even in its last month of operation, $30 a megawatt hour or 3 cents per kilowatt hour. And we shut it down. We blew this one up. That's what we do with 30-year-old, 50-year-old assets. We blow them up. That was South Australia. This one's going to get blown up, not yet, but soon. The New South Wales government sold it for nothing, literally gave it away in 2014, because coal was on the way out, to a big company called AGL, which is now going to shut it in 2022. Boy, have we got trouble coming, and we've realised it, and they're trying to stop AGL from shutting it. People have offered them $250 million to buy it back, and they won't sell it because they're better off blowing it up and getting rid of it because it makes all their other renewables earn more money. I'll explain that in a second. See, here's a price graph. Our system of pricing our market means that everybody bids in. So these guys are bidding cheap. They're saying, we'll make electricity for $5 a megawatt hour. These are more expensive bids. These are brown coal, including Liddell. Now, the winning bid somewhere up here, the one who makes the winning bid, the price is set for the whole market. So all of these who bid lower, they get paid the same rate as the winning bid. If you get rid of a couple of these, it shifts the winning bids further up, doesn't it? So the price everyone earns goes up. You can see why AGL and other companies who own a mixed bag of many assets want to shut down their brown coal because all the rest will be earning these higher rates. So we've created a market which is great for destroying value. And when we did close Hazelwood coal, look at the difference here in our pricing. These are bids that were won by brown coal, cheap bids. Suddenly, brown coal hardly ever won the bidding market because there just wasn't enough brown coal left in Australia to win the final bid price. So just shutting one factory down, one generator down, changed everything. Now, signs of success. BlueScope Steel, electricity price for industrial outlets has gone up 93% in 2 years. And that's not counting our latest run of renewables added into the system. Like I said, watch this space. We're moving back to diesel. I mentioned all those diesel gens. Sorry, it's 100-year-old technology. I need to slow down or just to... Okay. Well, luckily, we're just about there, and I will let you all go to dinner. Our Australian real net national disposable income was rising for like 60 years. This was a recession, the only recession we've had since the Great Depression. That bump was the GFC, and this is something else. The last 5 or 6 years, Australians' disposable wealth is really hurting. It's stopped growing. I'll argue it was renewables that achieved that success, but we'd need a big study to show. That's the rise of electricity in Australia compared to most other goods, and you can see it has really lifted off about the same time as we started adding renewables in. And the price of our wholesale electricity is just going for it. It's, like I said, watch this space. Australia's an exciting place to be. More wholesale electricity prices just lifting off. We've hit some kind of seismic point. So, ladies and gentlemen, I might wrap up on just the note that if there was a renewables heaven, it's Flinders Island. Because on Flinders Island, there's only 700 people, a bunch of diesel generators. They have ideal wind, ideal tidal. If anywhere renewables can make it, and lots of sun, it would be here. But even here, their big promise, they're in a wind stream called the Roaring Forties, to give you some idea of how good it is. When they achieve 100% renewables, they have admitted prices won't be going down. If there is a renewable heaven, a place where renewables ought to be competitive, this is it. And it isn't going to work. So, ladies and gentlemen, Australia, if anywhere was going to work for solar and wind power, we would be it. And we're doing that experiment. So, mark my words, watch this space and then don't do what we're doing, please. Thank you.